Hello everyone and welcome back to another Blender Made Easy tutorial. Today we're going to be creating a high-rise building in Blender. So we're going to be modeling different set of windows, and then afterwards we're going to be using an array modifier and duplicating them, putting them in different places to create a high-rise building. So this is going to be our final result right here. This is my scene that I created, and I added a little bit more detail than what we're going to be doing in this tutorial. Like you can see down here, there's some transformers and some different pipes and whatnot. We're going to be creating the building, this top part, the part over here, and then we'll be adding in the lights. So let's get started with this tutorial. So first off, we're not going to need this cube, so we can press X and delete it. Next, press Shift A, go to Mesh, and then Plane. I'm going to rotate this plane 90 degrees, so press R, X, 90 and enter. There we go. Next, I want to make sure the origin point is at the bottom of our plane right here. So I'm going to go into edit mode, press G, Z, holding control. I'm going to snap it to that blender unit up right there, and you can see the origin point is at the bottom. Next, press N. And if we come over here, we can see the dimensions of our plane. Right now it's 2 on the X and 2 on the Y. But if you notice, it's completely flat on the Y, so this should not be 2, this should actually be 0. And the reason for this is because we haven't applied the rotation to our plane. So let's do that real quick. Let's press Ctrl A and click on rotation. And then you'll notice that the Z is now 2 and the X is 2. And the Y is set to 0, and that's what we want. Alright, so now that we've done that, let's set the exact dimensions that we want. Now, for the average house, this Z value is usually 2.74, so we're going to type that in here. So type in 2.74, and there we go. So this is the average height of a ceiling, and that's the value that we'll be using. And for the X value, we can probably go around 4 blender units. So I'm going to press S, X, and drag it along the X till it's about 4 blender units. It doesn't have to be perfect, but probably right around there, maybe a little less. Alright, that looks good. Next, go into edit mode. We're going to be adding in 2 loop cuts, so press Ctrl R, add in 2 loop cuts, left click, then right click. Then come down here to face select mode and select all of the faces. Then hit the I key, we'll hit it twice so it insets the individual faces. We'll drag it in just a little bit, right around there. Then press E to extrude and we'll drag them back. There we go, not too bad. Next, I'm going to press Shift A, add in a mesh and then cube. Then go into edit mode, scale this cube down, then place it over in the top left corner. So go into front view by pressing 1 and then 5 for orthographic view. I'll press G and move it right up top. Right about there, looks good. Then right click on this bottom face and drag it down. Then drag it down till it's at the bottom. There we go. Next, press E to extrude, drag it down a little bit so it's past. Then right click on this edge and then press E to extrude and we'll drag it this way. Next, go over to the modifier tab, click add modifier and mirror. Alright, and then you can see it's on that side. We can turn on clipping and drag this till it's connected right there. Then you can press X and delete that face. Alright, there we go, looking good. Next, let's apply this mirror modifier. So click apply, then shift right click on this plane and press Ctrl J. So now this is one object. Alright, looking good. Let's press N to close off that panel since we're not going to need it anymore. Okay, next thing I want to do is make sure this right here is completely flat. So go into edit mode, go into vertice mode, Z for wireframe. I'm going to deselect, then draw a box around the top set of vertices. Then press S, Z, 0, and enter. Alright, there we go. Next, let's Shift D this, so press Shift D and move it along the X. And we're going to change this up just a little bit. First thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of a balcony, so go into face select mode, right click on all of these faces, then press E to extrude and just drag it out just a little bit. Alright, so there we go. Next, go into edge select mode, right click on all of these edges, then press E to extrude, Y, and drag it out a little bit. Then to make it flat, go S, Y, 0, and enter. All right, let's go into top view, Z for wireframe, and then we'll make this flat. So select everything, S, Y, 0, and enter. All right, there we go. Let's right click on both of these, drag them this way a little bit. Then we'll right click on the main one that we created, Shift D it again. For this one, this is going to be a actual balcony with a railing. All right, so go into edit mode. We're going to right click on all of these faces and the one on the side as well. And then press E to extrude and drag this out a little bit. All right, there we go. Next, I'm gonna right click on these two faces, Shift D it, right click, S, Y, and drag it in a little bit, then drag it all the way to the side. Then press E to extrude and drag this to the height that you want. Probably around there, I think will be good. Next, we're going to make these two faces into windows. So hit the I key twice, inset them a little bit, then press E to extrude and drag it back. All right, there we go. We have our balcony. The last one that we'll be doing is pretty simple, and this one we're going to add in a plane. So Shift A, mesh, and plane. R to rotate, X, 90, and enter. Then press Tab, G, Z, holding Control. I'm going to snap the origin point to the bottom. Now make sure the height is exactly the same. So press the N key and set the height of the Y. We'll apply the rotation in a second. Set the Y to 2.74. All right, go into front view, GZ, we'll drag it down a little bit. Next, we're gonna go into edit mode, press S, X, and scale it out. Not as much as the ones over here, but just a little bit. Then add a loop cut right in the middle. Next, go into face select mode, right click on both of these faces, hit the I key twice, we'll inset it, then press E to extrude and drag it back just a little bit. All right, there we go. Not too bad. Okay, so there we go. We have all of our windows that we'll be adding to our building. I'm gonna press N and T to close off both of those panels. Now let's apply the rotation to this. So press Control R, or Control A, and click on rotation. All right, before we start moving on to the building itself, we need to apply the materials to this. So let's right click on our first one, go over to the material tab and new. We're going to name this material white, so just type in the word white. Then for the surface, we're going to set this to principled. Now underneath the settings, we're going to drag the roughness up to 0.4, and then the specular, we're going to drag that down to 0.4 as well. All right, there we go. Everything else is fine. We can open up the preview and see what it looks like. Next, hit the plus sign, new, and we're going to be calling this one window. Now, if you're creating the entire building interior as well, you can set this to the glass shader, but since we're not going to be doing that, we're just going to be doing the outside, I'm going to set it to glossy. The roughness, I'm going to set to 0.01, so it just gives it a tiny bit of roughness. And then for the settings down here, I'm going to set the viewport color to a nice blue, so we can differentiate where the white material is and where the window is. Next, go into edit mode, and then right click on these three faces. Then click on window and assign. All right, so you can see that material is now assigned to those windows. Next, let's come over here, go into edit mode, do the same thing. First, we have to select the white material, so click the drop down menu, hit the plus sign, drop down menu, window, assign. We need to do that 2 more times. So for this one, click on the white material, hit the plus sign, and then window. And for this, we're going to select the windows in the back and the windows in front and assign. Last, this one right here, white, plus sign, drop down menu, window, edit mode, and then assign. All right, there we go. Now we are ready to start applying the array modifier to our building. So the first thing I'm going to do is right click on all of these, hit the M key and move it to layer 2. Then go to layer 2, right click on our first window that we created and Shift D. Press the M key and move it to layer 1. For this, I'm going to go over to the modifier tab, click add modifier, array. I'm going to set the count to 3, and then I'm going to hit the copy button, and this will copy this array modifier. So we'll hit copy and then close that off. For this, we'll set the value to 0 and then the Z value to 1. All right, and then we can set the count to 4. I think that will look good. All right, one more modifier that we'll be adding is another array. So click a copy and that will copy that array modifier. We can set the count to 3, and then for the Z value, we're gonna go with a value of 1.25. All right, and that gives us a small gap right in between all of these where we can place the other windows that we have. All right, there we go, looking good. And here you can decide how tall you want your building to be. Mine right now is going to be 14 stories, so I think 3 is perfectly fine there. Next, let's go to layer 2, and I just forgot, I want to do one more thing with this window right here. I'm going to go into edit mode, place my cursor right about here, Shift A, and add in a cube. I'm going to scale this cube down, then press S, X, and scale it along till it is the width of the window. This will just give it some more interest and differentiate from the other windows. Make sure it's a tiny bit back, not completely back, but just a little bit, so there's a small gap right there. All right, there we go. Then press Shift D, right click, M, and 1. Now let's go to layer 1, and let's position this in between our buildings right here. So go into front view, G, place it right here. We'll zoom in a little bit, drag it up, and then G, X, we'll drag it this way till it's lined up on that edge. Then click Add Modifier, Array. We can set the count to 3. There we go. And then hit copy, and then we'll set the X to 0, and the Y, I think it needs to go 2.5. Nope. We also need to set this to 2. We'll drag this up till it is the height. Looks like exactly 5 is the number that we need. So type in the word or the number 5 there, and there we go. We can see it's perfectly in line. Okay, the last thing that we need to do with this is drag this backwards since there is a small balcony. So I'm going to drag it along the Y till it's just a little back. All right, there we go. Now let's go to layer 2 again, and then we'll right click on our balcony window. We'll Shift D this, right click, M, and move it to layer 1. Then go to layer 1 and let's position this. So go into front view. I'm going to position this along this edge, so just place it right there. Then hit the Add Modifier, Array. Set the X to 0 and then the Y to 1, and then we can drag this up. So we'll type in the number 14. Oh, hold on, that's the wrong one. Set that to 1. Type in the count to 14. And there we go. And it goes all the way up. Next, press G, Y, and just drag this back. There we go. Then zoom in and make sure there's no parts right here where you can see through. Make sure it's connected. All right, so there we go. We have one side of our building done. We need to do this side now. So for this side, I'm gonna go to layer 2, right click on our last plane that we haven't added, Shift D, M, and move it to layer 1. Go to layer 1, then we're gonna rotate this 90 degrees. So hit R, Z, holding Control, I'm gonna snap it to 90 degrees, and then place it along this wall. So I'm gonna go into top view, and then G to move and place it right here. All right, good. Then click Add Modifier, Array. We can set that to 2. Then click Add Modifier, Array, set the X to 0, and then the Y, or the Z, to 1. Then of course, set this to 14. All right, there we go. We can see it reaches the height, and it looks like it's a little shorter. So what I'll do is press S, Z, and just drag it out a little bit till it reaches that height. Looking good. Next, I'm going to right click on our balcony windows, go into top view, Shift D, place them on this side, R, holding Control, I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, and then place it right in line with our other windows right there. Okay, looking good. Then I'm going to add another array modifier to this. So click Add Modifier, Array, and we're going to set the count to 3. Perfect. One more array modifier. I'm going to just close those off, add modifier array. I'm going to set the count right here to 1.25. And you can see there's a small gap right there, which is exactly what we want. Then I'm going to right click on our other windows, Shift D it, Y, and drag them out this way. I'm going to place it right here, then get rid of the 2. So we can have just one row of windows right there. Let's go into top view and we'll zoom in here and make sure it's in the right place. So I'll just move it right there. And there is a small gap, so I guess we need to just shrink this value down. So 1.21, and you can see it's now closed off. Perfect. Okay, so the last row of windows that we'll be adding is this one right here. So we'll right click on those windows, go into top view, Shift D, and place it over here. Then R to rotate, I'm going to snap it to 90 degrees, and then place it right here. Okay, next I'm going to get rid of all of these array modifiers. Make sure this is at the bottom, so we'll drag it down. Go into front view and just make sure it's completely in line. There we go. Then click add modifier array, set the X to 0 and the Z to 1, and then set the count to 14. Okay, there we go. We have our building. Next thing that we'll be doing is adding a small border around here and then maybe adding a wall or so down here as well. So this is pretty easy to do. All we're going to do is just place our cursor right here, Shift A, add in a mesh, and then cube right here. Go into top view and then place it in this corner. I'll scale it down a little bit and place it right here. We can have this a little forward as well, so it gives it some depth. Then go into front view and drag this down to the bottom. It is a little bit big, so I'm going to scale it down even more. Place it right here, side view, and drag it in front. All right, go into edit mode. We're going to right click on this face and drag it all the way up to the top. Then at the top, we're going to extrude this. So press E to extrude, drag it up a little bit, right click on this face, E to extrude, we'll drag it across, all the way across right here. Next, we'll add a loop cut, so Control R, add a loop cut here, drag it along. Then we'll go into face select mode, right click on this face, E to extrude, and we'll drag it across until it reaches the edge. E to extrude again, and then finally we'll drag this face down, E to extrude. All right, there we go. We have a border, and it looks like though there's a small gap here. So an easy way to fix that is just to go into edit mode, right click on all of these faces and drag it along the Y. And then the same thing over here. We'll drag this face, and this face, and drag it along the Y till it reaches back. All right, there we go. We have our building main structure done. For the material for our border, we're just going to be using the white material. So click on the drop down menu and select white. And also just to give it some more detail, we can add a bevel modifier to this. So press Ctrl A, apply the scale, then click on add modifier, bevel. We'll zoom in here. We'll set the width down to a lower value. So we'll just drag this down, probably around 0.04 or so. Then we'll turn up the segments to 3. Not too bad. All right, so now that we've done that, we can create the front right here. We can add some more windows, and then we'll add a big wall along this side. So first, let's do the windows. So I'm going to place my cursor right about here, Shift A, add in a mesh, and then plane. Press R, X, 90, and enter. Then go into front view. I'm going to place this along this edge, and now since we're adding a little bit more, we can drag this face down to the bottom. I'm also going to press N and set the dimensions of the Y to 2.74. There we go. We can actually set this to 3. We'll make it a little taller, and then we'll drag this down. So this is going to be our height of our doors right here. So then go into edit mode. I'm going to right click on this edge and drag it across. All right, right about there looks good. And then we'll drag this back up till it matches the height of our doors right about there. Can drag this back into the building itself. Okay, then go into edit mode. For this, I'm going to add in about 3 loop cuts, so we have 5 different faces. Left click, then right click. Then go into edit mode, or go into face select mode, right click on all of these faces, hit the I key twice, inset it, and then press E to extrude and drag them back. All right, looking good. Next, I'm going to add in another cube across this top. So place my cursor right about there. Shift A, add in a cube, and scale this down. Then press S, X, and scale it all the way across. For now, we'll leave it there, and we'll drag this face across this way. Perfect. For the material for this, we're going to go to the Material tab, click on the drop-down menu, and select White. Hit the plus sign, drop-down menu, and Window. Go into edit mode, right-click on all of these faces, and Assign. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's add the border along here, or the wall. So I'm going to add in a cube, so Shift A, add in a cube, go into Front View, Z for wireframe, and then we'll place this cube along this edge. I'm going to press S, X, make it a little smaller, and place it right about here. Then go into edit mode. I'm going to right click on this face, drag it up. All right. And we'll drag this back. Then we'll right click on this edge and drag it all the way across. So drag it all the way this way until it reaches that corner. Drag this all the way across. All right. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go into edit mode on our wall right here. Control R, add a loop cut, and drag this all the way across. Then Control R, add a loop cut up top. Then right click on this face and extrude it along. So press E to extrude and drag this, hold on, E to extrude, there we go. Drag this all the way across until it reaches that other side. Okay, then go into side view by pressing 3. Gonna go into edit mode, Z for wireframe, draw a box around all of those and just drag them back just a tiny bit right about there. Looks good. All right, and it looks like though we need to drag this down because we added that border now, so we'll drag that down. Then we'll right click on our border, right click on this face, drag it down. And then finally over here, we'll do the same thing. So right click on this bottom edge and drag it down. Okay, there we go. We've completed our building. And now we're going to add some lights onto the side right here and underneath. So first off, I'm going to save my project. So hit Control S. I'm just going to save it to building tutorial. And I'm just going to call it building tutorial 2, since I've already tried to record this and the recording failed on me. Next, I'm going to press N to close that off. Okay, so for the lights, I'm going to just place my cursor right about here, Shift A, and add in a mesh and then cube, and scale this cube down. Next, I'm going to go into edit mode, right click on this face, drag it along the X, then press S, Z, scale it down, and then press S, Y, and scale it along the Y. All right, then right click on this back face, S, Y, make it a little longer. Then for this face right here, I'm going to inset it by pressing the I key, and then press E to extrude and drag it up. All right, there we go. Then click the drop down menu, select the white material, then hit the plus sign, click on new, and we're gonna call this material light. For the surface, you can set it to emission and set the strength to a value of 15, let's try 10. Then go into edit mode and assign that light material. Let's press Shift Z and see what it looks like. There we go, not too bad, looking good. We can drag this along this way, maybe scale it down a little bit. Okay, then go over to the modifier tab, click add modifier, array. Set the X to 0, and then the Y, let's try like 8. There we go. The 8 looks good. And then we can drag the count up, probably around 8 lights or so, then drag this out. All right, let's press Shift Z, and there we go. We can see a lot of lights are now flooding into our scene. Looks like the lamp is still in our scene, so we can right click on the lamp, press X, and delete it. Now for the lights underneath our doors, I'm just going to place my cursor right here, press Shift A, add in a mesh, and then circle. Scale this down until it matches the side, until it matches the size of our border right here. Go into edit mode, press F, then E to extrude, then E to extrude again, right click, scale, then E to extrude and drag it up. I'll zoom in here so you can see it a little bit better. All right, there we go. Then press A once or twice, Control N, and that will fix the normal, so now the shading is perfect. For the material for this, we're going to do the exact same thing. Add the white, hit the plus sign, drop down menu, light material. Go into edit mode, we can right click on that inside face and assign the light material. There we go. All right, we can drag this along here. And what I want to do is have each of these be under each one of these doors. So hit the add modifier, array. Now we're gonna have to play around with the X value. We can just drag this up for now, probably around 31. Drag this out till it's 4, and it looks like it's even along each of these windows, which is perfect. We can press Shift Z one more time, and looks good. All right, one more material that we need to do for our scene is this border right here, or this wall, and this is going to be a concrete material. Now the link to the texture is in the description, and we're going to be using this one right here, Concrete Bear 0428. So let's go back to our scene here. Go into edit mode, A once or twice, U, and Smart UV Project. Then hit OK. Also, let's set this to scale, so hit Control A, apply the scale, and then do that. U, Smart UV Project, OK. Over in the Material tab, I'm going to hit New. Underneath the color, we can select Image Texture, then hit Open. Navigate to where your texture is. Let's see if I can find mine real quick. Concrete Bear 0428. 0428 right here. Then hit Open. All right, let's go into texture view to see what it looks like. And we can see it is very, very big. So we need to open up the UV image editor and scale it up. So open up a new window, come down here and click on UV image editor, then go into edit mode. Press A and then scale it up really, really big. And if we zoom in here, we can see our texture, probably even larger. There, looks pretty good. Next, go to the node editor, then press N to close off that panel. For the diffuse, we're going to delete that, press Shift A, add in a shader, and then principled shader. Take the color, plug it into the base, then take the output, plug it into the surface. The roughness we can leave at 0.5. The specular, we can drag this down to about 0.2. All right. Another thing I want to do is change the color of our texture a little bit. So I'm going to press Shift A, go to Color, Hue, Saturation, and place that there. The saturation, I'm going to drag to 0.8, and then the value, just to make it a little brighter, I'm going to drag to 1.2. Next, take the color and plug it into the displacement of the material output, and you'll notice in the preview it gives us some displacement. Now, to control how much displacement there is in the scene, I'm going to press Shift A, go to Converter, and then Math Node. Place that in between the displacement and the material output, then turn on Multiply. Now this value down here controls how much displacement there is. So we can set this to maybe like 0.3, 0.2 or so. I think 0.2 is perfectly fine. All right, there we go. Now we can close this off. Perfect. Now let's do the lighting for our environment. Now we're going to be using an HDR, and it's right here under HDR Haven. This is a great website for free HDRs. They're very high quality and the textures here are great as well. So go check this website out and you can see what this texture is looking like. Down here you can download which one you want. For mine, I used the 4K or maybe I used the 8K. Can't remember, but we're going to be using one of those, so feel free to download which one you want. Next, let's open up the node editor. So drag out a window, click on node editor, and go to the world settings. Click on use nodes, then press Shift A, go to shader, no, not shader, texture, environment texture. Take the color, plug it into the background, then open up your HDR. And mine is right here. So I did download the 8K, so Sky is on Fire 8K, and open. Let's set up the camera so we can see what this looks like. So I'm gonna put my camera right about here. All right, then hit Control-Alt-0. Another thing I want to do so we don't go underneath the building is I'm gonna press Shift A, add in a mesh and then plane, and drag this to the bottom of our building, and then press S to scale it out really big. So if we press 0, we can see that we're underneath our building. So I'm going to right click on our camera, GZ, and drag it up. Now I want to be able to see our entire building. So to do that, we can change the focal length. I think for my scene, I did use a value of 22. And there we go, we can see our building even more. What we can do also is press G, Shift Z, and then move our camera along the different axes. So we'll drag it back. I'll just drag it back manually. So go into top view, drag this out here, then go back into camera view. We'll rotate this down a little bit. Shift Z, and I think there we go. We can see our entire HDR and everything in our scene. It looks like our window though is kind of blurry, so maybe let's try 0.002. Shift Z, and there we go. That looks a little bit better. Okay, another thing I forgot to do with the material is we're going to apply the array modifier to our building right here and apply a different material just to give it some more variation. So for our windows we have selected right here, I'm going to go over to the modifier tab. I'm going to close this off as well and apply both of these modifiers. So hit apply and apply. Same thing for the other row right here, apply that material. And then we can also just join these objects together. So hit Control J with them both selected. All right, and if we go into edit mode, we can see all of them there. Okay, so come over to the modifier tab, click on the plus sign, the material tab, and then hit new. We'll type in the word gray. And then with the principled shader, we're gonna set this to a gray color. So underneath the base, drag this down till it's a nice gray color. Then go into edit mode. Now what you need to do is just randomly select different windows and apply the gray material. So first off, we'll grab this one, maybe just this one like this, something around here. Doesn't have to be perfect, just random faces to give it the gray material. Because right now everything is super uniform and it doesn't look too realistic. As you can see there, everything has the same material. So just randomly select different faces and then we can apply the material to it. Something like this. All right. And there we go. So now that we've done that, we can click on gray and assign. And there we can see our faces. So now if we press Shift Z, we'll notice that there's a lot of gray right here and it looks a little bit better. You can also do the same thing with your other buildings. So you can go into edit mode, maybe select the white right here. So maybe select those two borders and then hit the plus sign, drop down menu gray, assign that. And that will just give it some more variation and you'll notice maybe that looks pretty good. And actually I think I'll leave it right there. All right, there we go. So let's go into camera view again. We'll press Shift Z to see how our building is looking. Not too bad. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is change the HDR just a little bit. So I'm going to open up the node editor one more time, go to node editor, press N, and then click on the world settings down here. First off, the color, I'm going to press Shift A, add in a color, hue saturation. I think the overall HDR is just a little saturated, so I'm going to turn that down to 0.9. And I'm also going to set the background strength to 0.2. So everything in the scene is just a little darker. Next, I'm going to press Shift A, go to Input, and then Texture Coordinate. Then Shift A, Converter, Mapping Node. Take the generated output, plug it into the vector, and then the vector into the vector. Now if we press Shift Z, we can rotate our position of the HDR. So I think if we just set this to like 240, there we go. Yep, that's the position I want. We can see the background here. We can see some buildings over there. The light reflecting off of our scene. I think it looks really nice. All right, next what we can do is add in a sun lamp. So I'm going to press Shift A, go to Lamp, and then Sun. Go into Top View, 5 to go into Orthographic View. Place this over here. Then double tap R, and we'll rotate it this way. Hold on, that's not the way I wanted. We'll rotate it down and place it right about here. Go back into camera view and see what this looks like. All right, there we go, not too bad. Okay, what I might try, just to give it some more variation with the material, is I might change this to the gray. We'll see what that looks like. There we go. That might look a little bit better, but I think I'll leave it as the white material. I think for my final scene, I did add a smaller border around and I gave that the gray material. So you can go ahead and try that if you want to, but I think I'll just leave it for now. Okay, and then we can also select the plane, give this a new material, and just kind of darken it up just a tiny bit so it doesn't reflect too much. All right, there we go. That looks a little bit better. Now, what you could do if you wanted, if you were going to create an animation or something, you could create the rest of the building. But for now, since we're not going to be viewing it from that angle, I think we can just leave the back right here without any building. Now, last thing before we render this out, I'm going to box select our entire building, Shift D it, and move it over here so we can see this in the reflection. So I'm going to place it right about there, move it back a little bit, then press Shift Z, and we should be able to see it in our reflection. And there we go, we can. And that looks pretty cool. So now that we've done that, let's go over to the render settings. The resolution, I'm going to turn up to 100%. Then the sampling underneath here, I'm going to set this to, let's go with 200. The clamp indirect, I'm going to set that to 1. I'm going to turn off reflective and refractive caustics. Okay, and I think we are ready to render. Let's save our project one more time, then click on render. This should render out pretty fast. And if there's some noise, we could go over to the render layers panel and turn on denoising, but I think it should be perfectly fine. So I'm going to pause the video right now until this is finished, and then we'll work on the compositing. Okay, the render is finished. It only took about a minute or so, and everything looks pretty cool. So next, let's come down here and click on compositing. Use nodes and backdrop. We'll close off both of these panels to give us a little bit more room. Then we'll set up the compositing. So I'm going to press N to close off that panel, right click on this and drag it over. To view the render in real time, you can press Ctrl Shift left click while you're hovering over the render layers panel, and that will bring in a viewer node. Now to zoom out, we can press the V key a couple times. All right. And then you can also press Alt V to zoom back in. So V, Alt V. Okay. Next, press Shift A. We're going to be adding in a filter and then glare to give the lights over here and maybe the background just a little bit of glare. We'll plug that in and change this from streaks to fog glow. The threshold we can bring down just a tiny bit. And to view this, we can actually set the mix to 1. And here we can see where our glow is actually affecting the image. So if we bring that even lower, we can see it right here. I think that's good. We'll set that back to 0 to bring back our image. All right. Next, press Shift A, add in a color brightness contrast node, and we'll just give the overall scene a little bit of contrast. So I'll drag this up to maybe 0.4 or so, and then the brightness we can drag down to -0.1. Then press Shift A, we'll do some color grading, so I'll place that here, the color balance node, put that into the composite, and for the shadows over in the lift, we'll drag that down to make it a nice red color. The midtones, maybe a blue, and then finally the highlights, we can make it even more of a red color. Something like that. So if we preview this, I'm going to Control Shift left click on our brightness contrast node, that's before, with the color grading, that's after. The last thing that we'll be adding is a vignette to darken out the edges. So I'm going to press Shift A, go to Filter, and then Blur. Then press Shift A, go to Distort, Lens Distortion, set the distort value to 1, take the image, plug it into the image, set this to Fast, Relative, Y, and before we do that, let's add in a color mix node, place that here, and plug it into the composite. Then take the image and plug it into the image. All right, now here is where you set the amount of darkness that you want or how dense it will be. So if we set this to like 15 or so, we can see it's pretty blurred out. The lower we go, let's try 10, the darker it will be, as you can see there. So I think, let's try 15 again. If we set this to multiply, it will get rid of the white and bring back our image. Now this factor controls how much darkness is in the scene. So let's try 0.5. And there we go. I think that's good. Let's try brightening up the highlights just a tad. There we go, that's a little bit better. Maybe darken up the shadows. Not too bad, a little bit more maybe. And then the highlights will drag up even higher. There we go, we got a nice glare, and I think everything else is looking pretty cool. So let's view the before and after. I'm gonna Control Shift left click, that's the before without any compositing, and then this is the after. And as you can see, it looks a lot better. So there you go, guys, that is our final scene, our final image that we'll be using. Let's go to the viewer node right here. I'm gonna save my project, and there we go. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching this tutorial. I hope you learned something new. If you created your own building, I'd love to see it. So make sure to post it on social media and all that fun stuff. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more tutorials, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Goodbye.